Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the vast expanse of space, on the outer rim of the explored universe, a small human colony stood as a beacon of life amidst the stars. The planet, named Aurelia, was an unremarkable world. Its skies were perpetually cloudy, and its fields were a dull, dusty red. But to the colonists, it was home. They had worked for generations to make it so, taming its wild terrain and transforming it into a place where humanity could flourish. Among these colonists was Lena, a woman in her early 30s with an unassuming demeanor but a quiet strength. She had grown up on Aurelia, watching her parents and their neighbors toil day in and day out to make the colony thrive. As a child, Lena had always believed that hard work and community could overcome any obstacle. But now, as an adult, she knew that there were forces in the universe far greater than she had ever imagined. The colony's peaceful existence was shattered one evening when the skies above Aurelia filled with the sharp, angular shapes of alien ships. The Kaldorans had arrived. The Kaldorans were a race known throughout the galaxy for their physical prowess and technological superiority. They had long ago transcended natural evolution, augmenting their bodies with cybernetics and genetic enhancements. They were faster, stronger, and more resilient than any natural life form. But in their pursuit of perfection, they had sacrificed something fundamental: their emotions. To the Kaldorans, emotions were weaknesses, flaws in the biological design that had no place in their vision of the future. And so, they had discarded them, becoming cold, calculating beings devoid of empathy or compassion. To the Kaldorans, humanity was a primitive, emotional species, a weak and inferior. Aurelia was nothing more than another colony to be conquered, another resource to be exploited. The colonists watched in horror as the Kaldoran ships descended. Their sleek, silver forms hovered ominously over the colony, casting long shadows over the settlement. A voice, cold and mechanical, echoed from the lead ship, transmitted across the colony through every available frequency. "Humans of Aurelia," the voice said, "you are hereby subject to the will of the Kaldoran Empire. Surrender your resources and your planet, or face eradication." Panic rippled through the colony. The colonists, though resilient, were not prepared for this. They had no military to speak of, no defenses capable of withstanding an invasion from a technologically superior race. Their only weapons were the tools they used for farming and construction, primitive in comparison to the advanced weaponry of the Kaldorans. Lena stood in the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest as she listened to the ultimatum. Around her, people were shouting, scrambling for answers, for a way out. But there was none. The Kaldorans were merciless, and surrender seemed inevitable. But something deep inside Lena refused to accept it. She had always been told that there was strength in humanity's emotions, and that love, hope, and unity could overcome even the greatest challenges. And now, faced with the cold, unfeeling might of the Kaldorans, Lena believed that more than ever. "We can't just give up," Lena said, her voice steady despite the fear in her chest. "We have to fight." A murmur spread through the crowd as people turned to look at her, some with disbelief, others with curiosity. "Fight?" Someone scoffed. "With what?" "They have ships, weapons, machines we can't even comprehend." "We're just farmers." "We may be farmers," Lena said, stepping forward. "But we're also human. And that means we have something the Kaldorans don't to heart. They think our emotions are weaknesses, but they're wrong. Our emotions are what make us strong." The crowd fell silent, eyes fixed on her. "If we stand together, if we fight for each other, we can find a way to survive this," Lena continued. "We know this land better than anyone. We've built this colony with our own hands. We can use that to our advantage. We can make them underestimate us." The words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, people began to nod. They were afraid of who it would be. But Lena's words had sparked something in them, a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Over the next few days, Lena and a small group of colonists worked tirelessly to prepare for the inevitable Caldoran assault. They scouted the land, identifying key choke points and areas where they could set traps. They gathered what supplies they could, fashioning rudimentary weapons from their farming tools and construction equipment. It wasn't much, but it would have to do. The Caldorans gave them no time to prepare further. On the 5th day after their arrival, they launched their first attack. The ground trembled as the Caldoran drones descended from the sky, their sleek, silver bodies gliding effortlessly through the air. The drones were the first wave, sent to scout the colony and assess the human defenses. But Lena and her team were ready. From the shadows of the rocky hills surrounding the colony, they struck. Using their intimate knowledge of the terrain, the colonists had set traps of pits covered with camouflaged nets, boulders rigged to roll down at the pull of a lever. The drones, while technologically advanced, were not equipped to handle such primitive, unpredictable tactics. The first drone was taken down by a well-placed net woven from local vines that snagged the drone's propulsion system, sending it crashing into the ground. The second was destroyed when a group of colonists triggered an avalanche of rocks, crushing the machine beneath a landslide. Lena watched as the colonists fought with a ferocity she hadn't seen before. They were scared, but they were also determined. They fought for their homes, for their families, and for each other. And in that fight, they found strength. But the Caldorans were not easily defeated. For every drone the colonists took down, 2 more would appear. Their numbers seemed endless, and despite the humans' best efforts, it was clear that they couldn't hold out forever. Lena's heart sank as she watched the drones close in on the colony. The traps had worked, but only for a while. Now, the Caldorans were adapting, sending in heavier, more resilient machines that were impervious to the colonists' makeshift defenses. As the drones advanced, Lena's mind raced. There had to be another way. They couldn't rely on brute force against the Caldorans. That was a losing battle. But what they lacked in technology, they made up for in something far more powerful. Emotions, Lena whispered to herself. That's it. The Caldorans had no emotions. They couldn't understand fear, hope, or love. And that, Lena realized, was their greatest weakness. Gathering the remaining colonists, Lena explained her plan. It was risky, and it would require sacrifices. But it was the only way. We can't fight them head on, Lena said. But we can make them doubt. We can make them fear what they don't understand. The plan was simple, but effective. The colonists would lure the Caldorans into a series of traps, not with physical bait, but with emotional displays. They would feign retreat, acting as if they were panicking and falling apart. They would show fear, desperation, and grief at all things the Caldorans couldn't comprehend. And in their confusion, the aliens would make mistakes. It was a dangerous gamble, but it worked. As the colonists put their plan into action, the Caldorans faltered. Their cold, calculating minds couldn't process the raw emotions they were witnessing. Why would the humans fight so hard for each other? Why would they sacrifice themselves for the sake of others? It made no sense to the Caldorans, and that confusion was their undoing. In the midst of the chaos, Lena saw her friend Mark fall. He had been one of the first to volunteer for the plan, knowing full well the risks. As he lay dying, a Caldoran drone hovering above him, Lena felt a surge of grief and anger. She ran to his side, tears streaming down her face. Mark, no, please see. Mark looked up at her, a weak smile on his lips. We did it, Lena. We showed them. We showed them a broken bar. His voice trailed off, and Lena's heart broke. But she knew he was right. His sacrifice, like so many others, had proven something to the Caldorans that they had never considered before. The Caldorans, for all their strength and technology, were nothing compared to the power of human emotion. Lena stood over Mark's body, her chest tight with grief, but there was no time to mourn. The drones were circling, regrouping after their brief moment of confusion. She clenched her fists, the weight of her loss heavy in her chest, but she knew Mark's sacrifice couldn't be in vain. The Caldorans had faltered, if only for a moment, And that was enough. They weren't invincible, not if their cold logic could be twisted by something as intangible as human emotion. Lena wiped the tears from her face, her mind sharpening as the clarity of purpose returned. She turned to the remaining colonists, who had witnessed Mark's fall. Their eyes were filled with fear, but also with a spark of determination. They had seen that the Caldorans, for all their power, could bleed. They could stumble. And now, Lena knew, it was time to push harder, to break them where they thought themselves strongest. "We keep fighting," Lena shouted, her voice carrying over the din of battle. "For Mark, for all of us. We show them what it means to be human." The colonists responded with a ragged cheer, but there was fire behind their voices. They had been pushed to the brink, but their spirits hadn't broken. If anything, their losses only fueled their resolve. Lena quickly directed her team to spread out, using the terrain to their advantage. Every ridge, every boulder, every crevice in the dusty red landscape could be a tool in their fight. They wouldn't rely on brute force. Instead, they would outthink, outmaneuver, and overwhelm the Caldorans with the one thing they didn't understand, the will to survive. The next wave of drones descended, their cold mechanical bodies glinting in the pale light of Aurelia's sun. They moved in perfect formation, a testament to the precision of Caldoran technology. But as they began their advance, Lena could sense something different. The Caldorans weren't adapting as quickly as they had before. The raw, unpredictable nature of the human resistance was throwing them off balance. Lena and her group baited the drones into tight passes between the rock formations, where the colonists had set more traps. This time, they didn't rely on brute force to disable the drones. Instead, they used distraction and confusion. One group would feign panic, drawing the drones in, while another group would ambush from a hidden position. The Caldorans, operating on pure logic, couldn't anticipate the humans' chaotic tactics. The fight dragged on, hours stretching into what felt like days. Lena's body ached, exhaustion threatening to slow her movements, but she pushed through. Every time she thought they might be overrun, the colonists found a way to rally, to fight back with more than just their hands. They fought with their hearts. As the sun began to set, casting a deep orange hue over the horizon, Lena saw something that made her blood run cold. From the Caldoran command ship, a new figure emerged, flanked by heavily armored drones. This was no mere soldier. This was their leader. The figure was tall, towering over the battlefield, its metallic form gleaming with the enhancements of 1,000 technological upgrades. This was Ziran, the Caldoran commander. His presence was a stark reminder of the gap between the two species. Physically, the Caldorans were superior in every way. But as Ziran's cold, mechanical gaze scanned the battlefield, Lena felt the growing certainty that this would be the final confrontation. Ziran moved with a precision that seemed unnatural, closing the distance to Lena with swift, fluid steps. The other colonists held back, unsure of how to proceed. Lena, however, stood her ground, her heart pounding in her chest but her resolve unwavering. She had to confront him. Everything they had fought for led to this moment. Ziran's voice, deep and emotionless, echoed through the battlefield. "You are the leader of this resistance, are you not? I have studied your tactics. Primitive, but effective in their unpredictability." Lena swallowed the lump in her throat. "We're not primitive. We're human. And that's something you'll never understand." Ziran tilted his head, a gesture that seemed almost curious. "Humanity is a flawed species. You cling to emotions, to bonds that weaken you. This broken bar sentimentality is why you will lose." Lena's jaw clenched. "You think emotions make us weak? You've seen what they can do. They're why we've survived this long, why we've been able to push you back. It's something your machines can never replicate." Ziran's eyes flickered with some unreadable signal, perhaps analyzing Lena's words. "Emotions are unpredictable, unreliable. We have evolved beyond them. They are no longer necessary." "Maybe to you," Lena shot back. "But to us, they're everything. They're what give us the strength to fight for each other, to sacrifice, to hope. That's why we'll win." Ziran regarded her for a long moment, as if weighing her words. Then, without warning, he raised one arm, and the drones behind him surged forward, their weapons trained on Lena and the other colonists. But Lena was ready. Now! She shouted, and at her command, the colonists sprang into action. From behind the ridges, they unleashed their final trip, a series of charges they had rigged to the rocks above. The charges detonated, sending tons of debris crashing down onto the drones, crushing them beneath the weight of the land itself. It was a risky gambit, but it worked. The drones were disabled, their mechanical bodies broken and sparking. Ziran, however, remained standing. His gaze flicked to the fallen drones, then back to Lena. Impressive. But you cannot destroy me with such primitive tactics. Lena felt a surge of fear but buried it deep. This wasn't over. Maybe not. But we don't need to destroy you. We just need to make you understand. Ziran stepped forward, his towering figure casting a long shadow over her. Understand? I understand that your species is doomed. You cannot win. Lena met his gaze, unflinching. We've already won. You just don't see it yet. For the first time, Ziran hesitated. The cold certainty in his voice wavered. Explain. You've seen what we're willing to do for each other. You've seen how we fight, how we care. That's something you'll never have, no matter how advanced your technology becomes. You've stripped away what makes life worth living. Ziran seemed to process her words for a moment. Emotions a broken bar weaken you. They cloud your judgment. They make us strong, Lena corrected, because they give us something worth fighting for. Without them, you're just a machine. And machines can be beaten. The silence stretched between them, the battlefield eerily quiet in the aftermath of the battle. Ziran stood motionless, his cold, calculating mind running through 1,000 possible scenarios. Finally, he spoke, his voice lower, almost contemplative. You believe that emotions make you superior? I believe they make us human, Lena said firmly. And that's something you'll never take from us. Ziran's gaze lingered on her, and for a moment, Lena thought she saw something, some flicker of recognition, of understanding. But it was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Without another word, Ziran turned and began to walk away, his metallic form retreating into the shadows of his command ship. The remaining Caldoran forces followed, their silent retreat a testament to their defeat. The colonists watched in stunned silence as the alien ships lifted off, disappearing into the sky. Lena stood there, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on her. They had won, but at a great cost. The Caldorans had been beaten, not by force, but by the one thing they could never understand, the heart of humanity. She looked around at the survivors, at the friends and family who had fought so hard, and knew that this victory was more than just survival. It was proof that no matter how advanced the enemy, no matter how cold or calculating, there was something in the human spirit that could never be conquered. Lena turned to the sky, where the last trace of the Caldoran ships had vanished, and whispered, "We're human. And that will always be enough."